Greetings, everyone, and welcome to The Reckoning. My name is Johnnie Ray Kornegay III, and I am happy that you decided to join us. The Reckoning is a program of CNP, also known as the Counter Narrative Project. Before we jump into today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, follow CNP on social media at CNP Tribe, and you can join our mailing list by visiting our website at thecounternarrative.org. The death of Malcolm-Jamal Warner rocked the world last week. Warner felt like a part of our families as we spent time with him in our homes every week during his years on The Cosby Show, playing Theo Huxtable. We watched Warner grow up, become a Grammy winner, a poet, a contributing member of the Atlanta arts community, a father, and a husband. We wanted to take some time to honor Malcolm-Jamal Warner's life and his contributions. Joining me today is Ernie Suggs. Ernie is an enterprise reporter covering race and culture for the AJC since 1997, a 1990 graduate of NC Central University and a 2009 Harvard University Nieman Fellow. He is also the former vice president of the National Association of Black Journalists. His obsession with Prince, Spike Lee movies, Hamilton, and the New York Yankees is odd. His article, Malcolm-Jamal Warner's Theo Showed Black Boys That Vulnerability is Strength, was published in the AJC's UATL. Ernie, welcome to The Reckoning. How are you?
I am doing wonderful, and thank you so much for having me. I've always been a fan of you guys, what you guys are doing, so it's an honor for me to be on the show today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this wonderful piece. I know that in my reach out to you, I definitely remarked that the piece was moving for me personally. So I'm curious, what feedback have you received since publishing the piece? And are there any surprises by some of the feedback that you've got?
There have not been any surprises in terms of negative feedback from the story. I mean, it's been all positive. It's been all love. It's always good for when you're a writer, it's always kind of good to get any of your work validated, not necessarily to approve it, but when what you do has an impact on people and it touches people, that's always very important. So I've gotten dozens upon dozens of emails and text messages and social media messages about the story. It's done very well, as you can imagine. It's done very well on social media, as you know. And people seem to, Malcolm, I think what my story did was kind of validate all of our feelings about Malcolm-Jamal Warner and about Theo Huxtable, who played such an integral part in so many of our lives growing up in the 1980s and early 1990s. So the response has been tremendous, and I've been very proud of that.
Wonderful. And that is a wonderful lead in to kind of where I wanted to go. One of the things I really enjoyed, there's a lot of ways that you could approach a piece like this, right? You could keep it like straight ahead and just kind of like do the highlights of the life of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, or, talk about the history of the Cosby Show and but you kind of did that and made it personal. You personalized this, which I loved. We even got a chance in the piece, folks go and take a look at it to see you as a youngster, right?
Yeah.
What inspired you to approach this story this way, and what do you hope folks take from it?
Well, I wanted to kind of show the correlation between Theo and all of us as Black men and Black boys who grew up in the 1970s and 1980s. As growing up in the 70s and 80s, television played a major part in raising us, so much more so than now, because now we have video games and streaming and all that kind of stuff. But back in the day, we watched television. So we watched Good Times and Jeffersons and Different Strokes and all that stuff. And, growing up in New York City in the 1970s, in my early ages, I had JJ and Michael and Lamont and, Lionel 1 and 2 as kind of the avatars for what young Black males were. Then when I get to high school, Theo Huxtable shows up. And while I am probably more economically aligned with, say, a Michael and a JJ, I was definitely more cultural and socially aligned with Theo Huxtable in where I wanted to go in life and where I thought my life was heading, I think we all envisioned a life as a Huxtable,
Yeah.
as something to aspire to be. It was, they were doctors and lawyers and had this great house in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn, not too far from where they lived, quote unquote, where they lived in the show.
Yeah.
So that was relatable to me as well. But then I knew I was going to college. I knew I was going to get married. I knew I was going to have a family one day. And that became an aspirational thing. So with me, Theo became kind of like that aspiration as to what you can be now as a black boy and what you can aspire to be as you grew older, and as well as accepting the challenges. And I think I put in my piece that we love Theo not because he was perfect, but because he was flawed. He had a lot of flaws. He was, I wouldn't say he was lazy, but he didn't do as well in school as he could have done. He was probably not as cool as he thought he was.
Mhm.
Probably didn't get all the girls that he thought he was going to get. He suffered setbacks that we
Mhm.
all suffered as children. But then we kind of find out kind of why he had his learning disability, why he was struggling in school, because he had a learning
Right.
disability.
Disability.
And a lot of times, for a lot of black kids, that kind of stuff is undiagnosed, and we don't know. And then we get tracked into lower level classes, and so it's all that kind of stuff kind of wrapped up in it, all kind of wrapped up into one. And as you're watching the Cosby Show, I don't think we all kind of realized that. I didn't realize it until after Malcolm's death, that the Cosby Show's narrative was about Theo. I think Theo was kind of the narrative thread to the show. As I mentioned, the first episode was about Theo, and the
Yep.
last episode was about Theo's end of his journey. So I think he represented a lot for all of us.
To that point, thank you so much for that, because I feel like I'll personalize this. One of the things that um I took great joy in, pride in, is watching Malcolm-Jamal Warner kind of grow and
Mhm.
evolve, right? So as Malcolm was becoming a poet and musician, I would think I was in my poetry phase of life,
Yeah,
where I was doing it kind of in the late 90s and early 2000s. And like, oh, look, Malcolm
yeah,
Jamal Warner
we
doing,
all went through that phase.
we all did. And so he has this tremendous legacy. And also watching him, especially in the last decade, kind of be almost an elder statesman, this representation of this black representation, but also this representation of black masculinity
Mhm.
in space, is also something that I kept noticing over the last decade or so. Um, what are your reflections about that part of his legacy, kind of his post Theo years, and kind of what Malcolm Jamal Warner represented from both a black representation as well as black men?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned in your opening, I live in Atlanta, so you would see Malcolm around town, doing poetry, singing, hanging out, being in his band. But I think Malcolm, post Cosby Show, Malcolm, he had a steady career as an actor, as a poet, as a Grammy winning musician. He didn't, quote unquote, necessarily blow up in terms of becoming a big, giant TV star, a big movie star. But he was always around and he was always evolving. And, the flip side of him not necessarily blowing up to be a big time movie star or TV star was the fact that he never blew up to blow up.
Mhm.
He never got in trouble. It was just like, never got into drugs, he never was on the front page of any tabloid doing something stupid. He was just always kind of like that guy. It was almost like again, like Malcolm Jamal Warner was us. He was just the kind of guy who, he graduated, from the Cosby Show and went on to become a family man and went on to do other different things. He didn't get stuck on Theo, although we all relate to him as Theo, but he did not get stuck on Theo. He had some amazing roles in The Resident. I remember he was in a Tuskegee Airmen movie, again winning a Grammy for his rendition of "Jesus Children of America" with Stevie Wonder's fantastic song. So he always evolved, and he grew as a person. I wrote in my story that whenever I saw him, I imagined him in these different phases of what Theo would have been like as an adult. So when I see him in The Resident, oh, Theo's a doctor. when I see him on stage. Oh, Theo became a musician, he became a poet because he embodied that character so much, and he just kind of like continue to kind of grow as a person. And I think that people his outstanding legacy, although it will be Theo, but I think his outstanding legacy will be is that he was just a regular guy who can relate to so many people and who we saw so much of ourselves in as this regular. Theo was, I mean, Malcolm was just a regular guy who just happened to have all these great talents.
Yeah. Um, hmm, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I remember so uh following getting the news about his death, and I talked about this with some of my other friends because I lived in Atlanta for so long.
Mhm.
It's weird. People think it's weird that myself and Malcolm had never met because
Uh-huh.
we like have very overlapping like people that we worked with or did things with or spaces that we would be in, but him and I had never met. And so I was like, no, I'd actually never met him. But what was so interesting to me is in getting news of his death, I immediately started texting people that I knew who absolutely were friends with him and just
Mhm.
was like, just checking in. And it was just so to your point, right? There was while he was this internationally recognized person for his work, he was also just like a person that people knew.
Yeah.
He was a dude that folks knew and hung out with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are tons of pictures on social media of him and just regular people, and myself included, as a regular person that he was friends with, that we were friends with him. Um, but yeah, I mean, he was just like this kind of down to earth guy. And when everyone heard about his passing, you hear about the passing of celebrities, and you're like, oh my god, such and such died, and you have this very deep emotional connection to it. But then it's all over; it's gone. That person is was somewhere else. But with Malcolm, I think that his passing hit us so hard because he was one of us and he was part of us. And I wrote in my piece about how fragile life is. A week before he died, I'm in Mexico doing the same
Damn,
thing.
man.
And I can't swim. So Malcolm could swim, but I'm in Mexico doing the same thing that Malcolm was doing, because that's how we live our lives. We can get in our car and God knows what can happen to us. So that's how fragile life is. So when we all heard about Malcolm's passing, it was not only a shock, but it was kind of like that gut punch that we had lost someone that was very, very close to us. Even if you did not know him personally, we felt that we knew him personally because we grew up with him and we grew up watching him, loving him, and respecting his work and who he
Absolutely.
is.
Yes. Um, it's interesting, yes, because I did read in the piece where you talked about, being in Mexico yourself. And so at 48, Ernie, especially since my father's death. So I actually ended up back here to help care for my father. And now I'm
Mhm,
here helping, to care for my mom. That's what took me from Atlanta back here.
mhm,
And so I am more aware of my mortality these days. Not just my mortality, but like the stuff I still need to get out, like the stories I still want to tell, like artistically, like all of that stuff, right?
mhm.
I'm curious for you, like how do you both as a journalist, but just as a person, a black man in this world, kind of contend with those realities, that dealing with your mortality and also the importance of just doing what you can while you're here. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
getting your stuff out. How do you kind of contend with that?
Well, I didn't know you was going to get all this deep.
I know, right?
But no, that's a great question. I'm 58, and I'm dealing with. I'm 58, and I have a very good relationship with my family, and I have a very good relationship with my fraternity brothers and people that I went to college with. But at 58, we're starting to lose people that we went to high school with, and elementary school with, and college with, and that every time you hear that, that kind of hits you in a different way. People that you dated, your frat brothers or whatever, and it hits you in a different way. And that kind of puts you in a mindset of, where's my life going? What do I need to continue to do? You think about your mortality, obviously, but I think that even bringing it back to Malcolm and how he was able to kind of pursue all of these different passions of his, whether it's poetry or music or fatherhood or travel or whatever he wanted to do. I think we should all kind of take advantage of that. And I think as I've gotten older, as work kind of ramps up and gears up, continues to gear up, I think it's important for all of us to kind of step back and decide, think about what do we want to do? How do we want to live our lives as stress free as possible? Stress is always going to be there, but just kind of like reclaiming who you are and what you want to do in life. Does that mean getting off at 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock so you can go to the gym and go to the sauna? That then do it. If that means taking an extra day to go on vacation or write a book, or just go hang out and walk in the park just to kind of clear your mind. I was reading I don't have it right in front of me, but I was reading Aaliyah Bundle's latest book about Aaliyah Walker, who's Madam C.J. Walker's daughter. And there's a passage in there about how Aaliyah Walker would just take a month to just go and stay in a spa, or what they call like a hospital. You remember, like back in the day in the 19th century, Black people would just check into a hospital for a month. I don't even know how they did that or what that even meant. But just to check into a hospital or check into a spa to relax. We can't do that for a month because we don't have the money to do that. We don't have the money that Madam C.J. Walker had. But just take the time out to take vacations and just to kind of chill and figure out what you want to do. Mortality, you can't stop your mind from thinking about it, but you can at least try to set yourself up in a position where you feel better about where you are in life. Feel better about where you're going and what you're doing. And I think that's what's important. I think, I wrote a story about Black joy for Juneteenth, about how Black people were reclaiming Black joy, how they were reclaiming their lives. And I focused on three people. One person who had gotten into a tragic accident. She had fallen down and broken her skull, and she decided to go into gardening. And, she just has this beautiful garden in her house. And another woman who teaches line dance 5 days a week after getting off work, this grueling state job. She goes to the local community center and teaches Black women how to line dance. So, there are all these examples of just how we as Black people can kind of reclaim our lives and use it almost kind of as a form of resistance to racism and things that are going on, but also resistance to our everyday life struggles, the resistance of work. I would love to get off work and go line dancing. I don't know how to dance, but I would just love to just kind of do that, or be able to kind of do that. So I'm trying to do more things. I got like 4 or 5 things I'm doing this week after work that I probably would not have done a year ago, because I would just come home and watch the Yankee game. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of get out more, have a good time. I don't drink. I don't do anything. I don't drink or smoke or whatever. So a lot of my time, I just used to come home and just watch TV, just kind of relax and chill. But now I'm just kind of figuring out, okay, there's a great community of people out here in Atlanta that I'm connected with that know me and like me and know my work, like what I do. I'm going to kind of savor those moments and kind of get back out there. So that's what I've been doing. I got an event tonight. I got an event tomorrow night, I think. Got 2 events on Saturday. I'm going to be tired, but I'm trying to live my best life.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing those nuggets. Because I do think it's important that folks hear from other folks just kind of how they are managing and evolving. Like it sounds like for you, this is like an evolution. So I absolutely
Yeah.
love that. So thank you so much for indulging me and being willing to share and open up and share with the folks. My last question for you.
No, well, for that question, you can't, you can't get off the hook. What about you?
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. For me, I think so there's a thing that I'm trying to do that's going to be interesting, right? So I think what most folks try and do, Ernie, or what most folks might do is like do more things. I'm
Mhm.
actually trying to do less things.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's the reverse for me, because I have lived my life doing,
Okay.
doing, not focused really on me accomplishing, right? Checking the boxes for things that I can get done in the world. And what I am really interested now is that last part where you just talked about, like, listen, sometimes you just got to sit and just be and just do that.
Mhm.
And I am trying to learn how to do that part, how to learn how to just go to the spot. Where you at today? I'm literally just at the spot.
Uh,
I'm not I'm not checking email.
uh,
I'm not even responding to that text message. I'm definitely not answering that phone. You will get me tomorrow. Like I understand that intellectually, right? That's a possibility for me that the world won't fall apart if I do that.
mhm.
I'm slowly trying to inch my way closer to it where I can just do it. Just be on vacation to be on vacation. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And, so yeah, so that's kind of where what I'm figuring out is the slowing down of it all for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So that I can enjoy life, you know what I mean? Like we know that we're here for a time. I should enjoy the time that I'm here and it not just be about work.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, I think that's for your viewers to see that you want to slow down and I want to speed up. So I
Yeah.
think that everybody has their own way of kind of getting to where they need to be, and I think that's important for us to for all of us to kind of figure out which direction we need to be going to get to where
Yes.
we need to be centered in life and centered in who
Yes.
we are ourselves. So that's great.
Thank you so much. And
Mhm.
so as we head out, um what what gives you hope about the future of storytelling? We're in this well, you know the moment that we're in, right?
Mhm.
Where there is so much coming at us. It's crazy how much information we get and how quickly, Ernie, a story is
Mhm.
gone from
Yeah.
like our minds, our thought process. I often say to folks, especially when I'm interviewing them, that like time is a concept I don't get anymore. I can't tell if something happened in 2024 or
Yeah. Yeah.
2025 at this point because things move so quickly. But I am curious from your perspective, as a journalist, what do you see or what do you hope for the future of storytelling
Mhm.
about Black folks, in particular for Black men and boys? I feel like we're in this interesting moment where we are having new conversations about Black men and boys, and adding and we're getting closer to having more nuance
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
conversations about who we are, how we show up in the world. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, what are your hopes for the future about that kind of storytelling,
Mhm.
either in journalism or kind of in broader media?
Well, I mean, I think I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, even this show, a show like this that kind of brings those topics to the forefront of our thinking and our imagination and putting them out there to your thousands of listeners, hundreds of thousands of listeners. That's what's important right now. And I think storytelling, the methods in which we tell stories have changed. With the digital is so quick and we're so fast to get stuff online. Oftentimes it's not right, it's wrong. Oftentimes we have people who are pontificating who have no leverage to pontificate, but yet they got a million followers. So I think that I look at myself. I've been at the Atlanta Journal Constitution now for 27 years. I'm like the fourth longest tenured person at the paper now, which is kind of weird because I remember I was like 500. But I look at now. I look at we have this great young reporter, this great young intern named Zaire, who is doing amazing work. He's like 19, 20 years old. He's aggressive and he's out there doing amazing work and finding really good stories and kind of putting me to shame as a veteran. So that's the kind of hope that I have, that we have this young generation of Black journalists who are out there wanting to tell stories. They can tell stories, but also people like myself. And, I'm a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. We have our convention coming up next
I
week.
mean, right up.
And
Yep.
yep. And that's again a chance to kind of regroup and to kind of hang out with the people that you came up with in this business. And there's so many of us who are still in this business, who are still telling stories, who are still training the next generation of journalists and storytellers, which I think is very, very important. So I think that the tools are out there to get out there and tell these stories. More so than when I started. And I think we should use these tools, use our power to be able to tell stories and to be able to tell our stories, because no one's going to tell our stories the way we tell them. I cover Black culture, and oftentimes, not often as much as I used to, but people would question why I wanted to cover Black issues instead of saying, hey, why don't you cover sports, or why don't you cover the government or politics? And my response to that is, no one can do it better than I can do it. So why
Absolutely.
would I trade covering this to cover something else that you quote unquote consider neutral? So I think that there's nobody in a better position to tell our stories than we are. And nobody is a better position in Atlanta than tell our stories than I am. So I enjoy it. I love doing it. I'm going to continue to do it. And I'm going to continue to hopefully train and have some people come behind me who are going to be able to pick up the torch, just like I picked up the torch from people 25 years ago.
Wonderful. Ernie Suggs, thank you so much for joining me here on The Reckoning. I really, really appreciate it. And for everyone who is joining in, thank you so much for tuning in with us and watching. Be sure to subscribe to The Reckoning and also follow CMP on social media at CMP Tribe, wherever you choose to do so. And make sure to keep this conversation going. Ernie, thank you
Thank
so much.
you. Thank you for having me. It's been great. And you got to have me back. I love to come back.
Absolutely. Listen, we are ready for you. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. Appreciate it.